Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Buff Life. I'm Buffy, and I hope you're all having a great day. I thought I'd check in with you today and talk to you a little bit about something that got me a little bit, not upset, but just really thinking today. So, I tend to watch different things on YouTube myself, and I saw a mini documentary, I want to call it. It's called Being a Black Man in a White Man's Sport, or should I say, being a black cowboy in a white man's sport. And I thought it was a really good storyline. So it was an interviewer, a gentleman interviewing the black cowboys. And it was the first one that he interviewed. I thought my perception of what he was going to be like was nothing like what he was actually like. So he interviews this guy, and the guy is really mild mannered, and he's not like cowboy, like country cowboy. He fell in love with riding bulls when he first tried it, so he made a career of it. He's been in it for 15 years. He was a very nice and friendly guy. He was probably like I would say no more than like 130, 140 pounds, maybe. Um, he was a slender built guy. He didn't look like no rough, tough cowboy, in other words, the kind that you normally see. But I was like, okay. And I thought he was going to speak real country, and he really didn't. And just a lot of the things that I assumed that I shouldn't have assumed, I did. So he started, the guy started interviewing this black cowboy. And he asked some questions like, how does it feel being a black cowboy and doing this sport with a majority of white people? And he said, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've had my share of people being very racist towards me, he said, but within your own group of people that you get to know and meet, you really don't feel it. He says, but when you go into like a stadium full of people, he said, as a black man, he said, I must say, I do sit there and I look around the crowd to find somebody that looks like me. He said, and it's very rare I see it. He said, because, it's not a sport that is widely watched in the African American community. And so you really don't see a lot of them there. He said, it might be 13 or 14,000 people in the stadium. And he said, it might be 4 black people, if that. He says, and he always looks to them and to see if he can find them. He says, out of just normal thing that he does. He said he's been at rodeos, and after the rodeo, um, they would do autograph signing, and they bring all the cowboys out, and everybody would walk up to get autographs. And when they got to him, they'd pull their paper back, like, "Who are you? What are you here for?" And I was like, "Really? Okay, all right." And then he said that it's happened like that to him before. So then and he said he was going to be retiring, and they asked him a question, a really good question. They said, "Well, you're retiring, so have you found a replacement for yourself or anything like that? Because there's not going to be any more top-ranked black cowboys because there is none." He's like the only black cowboy out of 100 top-ranked cowboys. And he's like, it's scary because I haven't seen anybody yet. He said, I'm hoping that coming to, passing, and I meet someone that fits the criteria that can go in there and I can teach them how to do this. And it made me think, because I was like, wow, it's kind of sad because, there are still things out there that we just don't touch, um, and then when you have someone like him who as a little kid experienced a situation where he got to ride a bull and then he loved it. And I think that happens to quite a bit of people. If we go into things and we're unsuspecting that we would like it, then we like it, to have the courage to pursue that career, even though it may not be a career that your culture or your race or whatever thinks is an appropriate sport or job for you, but you have to follow your own dreams. And I really admired him for saying that he just fell in love and he did what he wanted to do. But, he's retiring now, and they asked him, why are you retiring? And he said, well, I've had my fair share of bumps and falls, and he said I've had a lot of stitches in my face. He said, and I don't want to go through the rest of my life if when you get on this bull, you're risking your life. And he said, I'm just kind of tired of risking my life on the bull. And he's like, I need to, it's time for me to relax after doing this for 15 years. I think it's time. And he's still young. I mean, he's very young, and he's retiring. So then after the gentleman interviewed him, he interviewed another black cowboy. Now he was totally different than the other one. This one that he interviewed, he kind of was country himself, and but he was still like he's very intelligent, and he started off the interview, and in different situations, when he asked him certain questions, he was like, you get out the sport what you put in the sport. That's one of his answers to a question. He asked him about how does it feel to be a black cowboy in a predominantly white sport. And then he said, I've had a lot of people around here that know me really well. He said, matter of fact, the guy that he pointed to a guy that was up on the fence, just, watching people practice for bullfighting. And he said, but the gentleman over there, I call him my father. Now he was a Caucasian man. And they talked to him, and he was real nice. He was real nice. They asked him questions about it. He said, yeah, this is like my son right here. I taught him everything he knows. And he, and they had a nice camaraderie about them. And then, so he, like I said, he spoke very highly of, he said, the people I'm around, my friends and stuff, I don't feel that. He said, I don't feel the racist. I don't feel like they're like that towards me. He said, I kind of get like, everybody just respects one another because they know how hard it is to be a cowboy and do this bull riding. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. A different experience than the other gentleman, right? And so then the interviewer, they get in the car and they go to a practice area where all of the local bullfighters go to practice for the big bullfight, or not bullfight, bull riding. So they have like all these different setups of basically to mimic riding the bull, and gets them trained for the actual rodeo. And he was actually training for the Houston rodeo, which is the biggest rodeo that they have. And I was watching it, and I said, that's really great that he had that, he had a great opinion about it, and he's had some positive things happen to him. But then the interviewer is standing there, and the interviewer gets a little distracted because someone walks up to him and asks him a question, but he can still like hear the conversation that's going on behind him, which is the it was two black cowboys, the one that he interviewed before and the current one, and then a bunch of other cowboys who were not black standing around him. There was supposedly this second cowboy's friend. So, but he heard out of his ear, he heard the cowboy say something like throwing popcorn and calling people names. And the interviewer immediately turned around. He was like, what? What did you just say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. So then you hear the same cowboy that he just interviewed and had all these positive things. He said, I guess he was feeling like he needed to come forward and say some things, because he said to him, he said, yeah, he said, I've been out there at times, and I'm sitting there waiting to get my turn up, and people have yelled out the N-word to me. He said, I've felt that. He said, I've heard that. I've had to deal with it. It's, you got some people who do that to you, and, you always have it no matter where you go. And immediately, one of his so-called white friends said, I've never felt that before. I don't think that's true. And I don't think these people around here are racist. Excuse me? I was like, I kind of laughed myself into anger, because I was like, why do you think that you would? You're not the one that's African American. You're not the one walking around here being called names and talked to like you were a dog on the street. Maybe worse than that. And it just baffled him why his black friend would be saying it. But it started to turn into a argument. And then the black cowboy said, listen, man, I don't want to start no argument or confrontation about this. He's like, oh, no, but I just never seen that. I don't think people around here think that. Maybe they're just scared. What are they scared of? Our skin color. You're scared of a skin color, but you'll go buy a black car or a brown car or a tan car. You're not scared of those colors on that car, but you're scared of our color on our skin. You find it offensive, our color. That is just, that's something to really think about. Because, people will say the craziest things. And when you think you have a friend like that and he comes and says something like that to you, and you have to rethink it and ask yourself, how would he even know if these people are racist around here? Because he doesn't have to experience it. He walks around under that privilege all the time, as opposed to the black cowboy who has to live in that skin every day. And it just seemed really offensive. And then the black cowboy said to his friend, he's like, well, I've been in a bar drinking with some of my friends after the rodeo. And he says, and other white guys have walked up to me and asked me, what are you doing here, N-word? And trying to start fights with him. And now he's saying this to this guy, and this guy is one of his friends that he goes out and drinks with and has seen this happen. But yet he's sitting in front of the camera acting like that never happened. He doesn't know anything about that. And I was like, okay, so you obviously know where that so-called friend's thought process is, and it just really bothered me. And I'm listening to it. It's Martin Luther King Day when I'm listening to this, and I'm like, wow. Then I start reflecting back on a speech that I had just heard earlier, in which Martin Luther King was talking about how people came to this country and they had got their 40 acres and a mule, but Black people were bought here under slavery, and then because of the Emancipation Proclamation, they freed the slaves, but they gave them no money, no land, no schooling or anything, and they wanted them to survive. And so you take something like that and you add 400 years of that to that whole equation, 400 years of slavery, of not being treated fairly, and still once you become emancipated, still not being treated fairly, but beaten, hung, raped. I mean, for any and everything that can possibly think of, you had it happen to you as a race, right? So then let's fast forward till today, when you can watch the news and see the so-called law enforcement taking Black lives. And there's always an excuse they make for why they took the life that's supposed to be justifiable. Just like they justified slavery, just like they justify hangings, beatings, rapings. And let's not forget the bucking farms. And if you're not familiar with what a bucking farm is, look it up. But in short form, it's where they would take all the men, all the Black male slaves to a farm and rape them and sodomize them to break their spirit. Yeah, farms of this. And then sell them off because they felt like if they broke his spirit, he would never run, he would never fight back. And they were successful. Oh, they were successful because they kept us oppressed and they still keep us oppressed. It's the ways that they do it. They're just a little sleeker and about the ways that they do it, but it still happens. Now, as cultural people that we are, I mean, you have to ask yourself this question: why do certain things happen in the crime-ridden neighborhoods where there's a majority of African Americans and other minorities there? Because they set up things like this, you know? And so just hearing this cowboy say this, and I'm like, it crosses over in every area of life. And it's just sad that we're in 2019 and we still have to talk about this. It's still the elephant in the room. And it's funny, you have people in all these cultures, and certain cultures have certain beliefs. It's like people from England. They don't like to talk about money, but they definitely want their money, right? And it's like, but no one wants to sit here and literally address all this racial content that's going on. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And then on top of that documentary, like back to back, I watched the same interviewer do another documentary. And this one was being a white man going to a H, B, HBCU college, right? Um, his name was Tiago, he's white, and he is attending Morehouse. Now, if you're not familiar with Morehouse, Morehouse is a predominantly Black HBCU, historically Black college or university, and it's male, all male students. Now, they asked him questions, about what made him decide to come to Morehouse. And, and I'm not going to lie, he seemed very genuine. He was like, no, he said, in elementary school, went to predominantly elementary school. He said, then when I got into like high school, I went to a predominantly white school. He said, and so being in both of those type of situations, he said, I always gravitated towards African American people. He said, it's just, when I went to decide what school I want to go to, he said, I didn't even apply to any other school. I only applied to Morehouse. He said, my mentor was a Morehouse graduate. He said, and he instilled so many values in me that I wanted to come to a college that has the same value system that he taught me, because I believe in that value system. He said, I'm not coming here because I want to be Black. He said, I'm coming here because this is my calling. I feel like I am a part of the belief system here at Morehouse. He said, I love the brotherhood that we have here. He said, I love what the school represents. He said, and I'm not here to steal anything or take anything away. He said, I just felt drawn to be here. And I mean, he seemed very genuine. He had a lot of friends there. But what I thought was really amazing to me is that here he was, he's a white kid at an all predominantly 99% Black university, college. And he asked him, he said, well, since you've been here, how have you had a lot of racial undertones happening, any incidents? He said, when I first got here, he said, I just had one person that came up to me and asked me what made me come here. He said, and I explained it to him. He's like, and he said, oh yeah, we just had other conversations and talked about other things after that. He said, but other than that, he says, I felt nothing like that. He said, I mean, people are extremely nice to me. He said, when I came from my orientation here at the school, he said, people were so nice. And he said, they welcomed me and with open arms. And he said, and I've never looked back. And then I thought to myself, here we go. We're so accepting as minorities in general. We're very accepting people. We can accept the cultural system from other people. We can accept Caucasian Americans and what they like and they think. But as far as them accepting us, it's just not happening like it should. And I don't think that, I know a lot of people in different races and cultures. And per se, if I had to say that they were racist, I wouldn't say that they were, but I think that they had blinders on. So I'm thinking, here's this kid at a Black university, college, historically Black college university, and he does not feel like the Black people there are treating him bad. He looks at them with the same compassion he would his family, he said. And he said his mom and dad, at first, it's not that they didn't want him to go there, but they told him, you might have a rough time there. I mean, you're going to be like the only one. And he told him, I don't really care about that. He said, because this is where I want to be. And he said, they're fine with it. They don't have a problem with him being there. And he says he's getting a great education. And I was like, see what I'm saying? Why can't it be the other way around? Why can't we say that we feel that way? And it's not like we sit there and tell them when they come, oh, you're not welcome. Don't you sit here. You can't sit next to me. We don't go out in front of their predominantly white places and march it and say, call them names and all. We don't do that. It's just not who we are as a people. We're like, okay, that's their business. That's just, we just don't really care about that type of thing. We're not going to go and protest a predominantly white country club. You know what we say? We don't want to. That country club is not for us. We don't want parts of those type of thing. But it seems like we're just so accepting. Is that because? That's a good question that I have to ask. Is that because we were bred to be accepting of things that happen to us? We just chalk it up on the list of things, another thing that we've had to deal with in our lives. That's a very controversial issue. And then I immediately after that, I turned the news on, and this lady is on the news, and she's like talking about something that happened to her, and now she has PTSD. And that's the reason why she did certain things. And I laughed at that. Now that made me laugh even harder. And let me tell you why. She said that what she said traumatized her. I was compassionate about. But I was like, every African American person in this country probably has PTSD. I said, if anybody's going to have some PTSD around here, it's us. We've been traumatized for 400 plus years at this point. And if we act crazy or do something out the box, it's because we're dangerous people. I don't understand why we don't all have a doctor claiming us all to have PTSD or diagnosing us with that, because I think we all have it. If we didn't have it, we all do the same things. If you think about it, most people, when you're in the car, and this is funny because you see comedians saying this all the time. If we're in the car and we're driving down the road, we see the police, we all look and watch that police and see what he's going to do. And we know he's going to pick us out. And it's like, that is not because we're just, it's from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. We all have it as African American people. Most minorities have it. Let's just put it that way. Because if you've been living under oppressed situations for years, it has taken its impact on us. So when they sit here and talk about all these people having PTSD, then if that's the case, if they can get traumatized from, this lady was traumatized, somebody broke in her house and she was traumatized and she got PTSD from that. I said, they broke into our country and stole us and brought us to a country and did hideous things against us. And you don't think that we should have post-traumatic stress disorder? And let me tell you this. They said, well, you guys weren't in slavery now. We are in slavery if you still think about that, because PTSD can be transferred. You are growing up in a household where your parents went through it. I know my parents went through it. That gets passed on down to your children in lineages of people. So we may not be under slavery per se, but we still have those slave mentalities going on from that. And I think it's PTSD. You can tell me it's something different, but that's what I feel that it is. And I'm like, well, if you can go and classify this one person who had somebody break into their house with PTSD, but a whole race of people who came from people that were slaves and beaten and raped and burned and stabbed and shot and killed for no reason other than their skin color, you damn right we got PTSD. I don't know. I'm thinking about going to my doctor and see if he can get me some help, because I mean, I'm laughing, but it's really true. I mean, even if you think about it right now, you sitting there, no matter where you're watching this at, you think about that for a minute. Your kids are going to be traumatized, even if it's going on for you and they don't feel it yet, they're going to feel it. If you're black and you live in this country, you are going to feel it at some point. And you are going to hear everything in your ear that you've been hearing for years, and it's going to all come back to you. And you're going to be like, wow, here it goes. So if we go and act crazy because of PTSD, we're just violent people. But we don't, it's not that we have PTSD or something's happened to us. We're just violent people. And that's just something you have to really sit and think about. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. What do you think about that? Do you think that we have PTSD? If you're African American or you're a minority and you felt prejudice and racism against you, do you think that that can be passed down to generations of people? And do you think that that is legally a right to say that we have PTSD? I mean, you look at what they classify as PTSD and you tell me. This is just my thought. I think about that and I just feel very sad that we have to be done that way, and that it's still going on and it's going to continue to go on, because as long as we have officials in this country who will not address the issue and instead applaud it, we're going to continue to go through this. And it's a very sad situation. I live in Houston, and I'll be honest with you, I have never lived anywhere else in this world where I felt so much racism going on. I mean, even working here, I work in the medical field, and I've been in places where, worked in places where they look at you and you come in and they just stare at you. And you know that when you walk in the door, you can feel all eyes watching you and watching every move that you make. I'll tell you about one little incident that happened to me really quick. So I'm working in this medical office, and I am the only Black person there. And I didn't let it bother me because, hey, I just said I'm not going to let that distract me. So about 3 months after working there, they hired another Black lady, and she wasn't even there for 2 days. And, us as Black people, we come up to each other and we talk to each other. We give each other certain looks and nods and stuff about certain things that we are feeling. And when she came in the door for her interview, she came over and talked to me and was and just having a general conversation with me. And I told her, I said, listen, do you want me to be honest with you about this place? And she said, yeah. I said, from the moment you step in here, you are going to be watched. I'm just telling you that. So if you get this job, make sure you're willing to do this. Okay. And she told me, yeah. Lo and behold, they hired her. And somehow I think they only hired us because they had to fit the quota, because they had 3 offices and there was no Black person in any of them, or minority, to be honest with you. So she gets hired and she's there for less than a day. And she's in the office because she's doing billing and coding. And so she comes up and tells me at the end of the day, she said, "You're not going to believe this." I said, well, I may believe it. What are you going to say? She was sitting in her office with her door closed. And when she had it cracked a little bit open. And whoever it was went and told a supervisor that she was in her office on her cell phone talking to her daycare provider about what time she was going to be picking her child up. Yeah, you heard me. Somebody actually went and stood by the door to listen to her, and then went and told a supervisor that she was doing that. And I said, see what I'm talking about? Why are they watching and listening to what you're saying? You're in your office, and the person that told doesn't even work with her in her area or anything at all. I mean, and I was like, do you see what I'm talking about? I said, now, they're going to continue to do that. They're going to try to find things to do and say to you that you're doing. It all boiled down to that with every position. Even in my job, I was working in the front office part, and the job was one particular thing, but within 3 months, it's like they were trying to give me everybody's little overage to do. And I was like, I told her, I said, I got hired for a specific role. Why am I getting work from all these other people in here? I said, I can't do that. And I left the job because 6 other people was slacking in their jobs, and I'm going to get the overflow from that. And I was mainly dealing more with the patients one-on-one than anybody. And I was just like, this is crazy. And I saw all the other people just doing whatever they wanted to do. But when it came down to me and her, they watched us like a hawk. Every little thing we do. If we weren't at our area we were normally working, if we went to the restroom, where'd that person go? Matter of fact, somebody even watched when this girl went to the restroom and called the supervisor and said she's been gone to the restroom for too long. And I'm just wondering, like, did you follow this girl to the restroom? How do you know she went to the restroom? And why are you timing somebody in the restroom? You can't put a time on somebody in the restroom. You don't know what they have to do. And it was just like, wow. And it was just so blatant that they were just watching. You didn't see them addressing anybody else like that, just us. And if they saw her and I talking together, they immediately went, "What are you guys talking about over there?" I'm like, just about kids. It just like, why do you even know what we're talking about over here? We're just having a conversation amongst ourselves. I mean, like, when I say like amongst ourselves, we're literally standing outside the job talking to one another because we're going to go off to our own separate car and go home. So we're just having a little conversation, laughing. They want to know what we're talking about. I was like, couldn't do it anymore. I just got to the point where really, I'm just like, you really, and then some money came up missing in the office. And it was happening the day I wasn't there. But when I got back to work, the next day, it was like $600 went missing. I was like, I didn't find out till like maybe midday. I was like, really? When did it go? What? $600 went missing. Why was it? Who had $600 around here? Just well, they said, oh well, somebody collected $600 from a patient, and it was in cash, and they put it in the cash box. And I'm like, okay, so where was the cash box not locked up? Turns out they didn't lock the cash box up, and I honestly even doubt if that person put that $600 in that cash box. I just didn't. I'm like, you guys have had this cash box for I don't know how long, and suddenly now that we are here, suddenly stuff is now coming missing. I know I wasn't even working that day, so I know it wasn't me. And the other girl, she works in a whole different area, so I was like, that's interesting. But they made sure they came and told me, and I was like, okay, well, I wasn't here yesterday, so I don't know anything about that. I just got in here today. Oh, okay. You knew that. You knew I wasn't there. And I was just like, wow. But I was like, thank God I wasn't there, because I was like, I don't know where that would have went. Because I'm like, I wouldn't, I mean, they probably say, oh, well, these are the new people that we never had money taken before. Okay, well, maybe they haven't had money taken before because you're right, we weren't there and they have nobody to blame. And now they can blame us. I don't know, it's crazy. But I would love to hear your thoughts on what you think about what I've said. And, anything you have to say, I'm open to. I don't mind hearing other people's opinions. And I definitely want to just pose that question. What do you think about that situation that I discussed, where we are, as a people, are more accepting of another culture than even our own? So tell me what you think about that. Put it in the comments. And once again, thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a beautiful day and stay blessed, okay? Talk to you later. Bye.